That is the amount that the winner of the LK Boutique 250k challenge will be taking home. It is the biggest prize in Australian sporting history. Players come from all over the world to take their shot at landing on this final table.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Crown Melbourne for the final table of the LK Boutique $250,000 challenge. Russell Barwick alongside Sherry Biggs for this exciting event, which again, we're down in Melbourne, we're on South Bank, the cafes are bustling, people are walking past. It's exciting outside, but I reckon it's a bit more exciting inside.
Well, this is one of the highlights of the Aussie Millions for myself, and I just cannot wait because some of the biggest players will be playing at the final table, and I think the stakes are pretty high with this one, so
Absolutely.
I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Cost them $250,000 just to sit at this particular table. So let's go inside and see what's happening as the LK Boutique $250,000 challenge continues.
And there is the final table, a $4 million first prize for the 2014 Aussie Millions Super High Roller LK Boutique 250k challenge. A lot of money to enter. A whopping prize pool of $11.25 million. And out of these 8 players, one of them is going to get a first prize of $4 million. Grant Levy, APPT winner, the Grand Final 2007. You've played with all of these guys. Who should we be looking out for, or is it all of them?
Well, in a 250k, Paul, you pretty much, there's no weak spots. You'd be looking out for every single one of them. It's interesting to see the chip stacks. There's a couple of short stacks already emerging.
We have Max Altergott from Germany opening with ace-6 of diamonds. Folds around to Erik Seidel, no stranger to Australia. There is Daniel Negreanu in the big blind with king-queen offsuit, and he makes the call.
I'm not betting, no matter what comes. I'm going to check and let him hang himself. I mean, let him do what he has to do. Did I say that out loud?
Always has fun at the table, does Daniel. And look at that. He flops top 2 pair. King-queen 3 flop.
Not much there for Max, Paul. He's on the short stack too, so any bet here is going to put a fair chunk of his chips in action.
45.
Makes a bet of 45,000. Daniel quickly looks over and just grabs a stack of chips and put him in, and Max folds really quickly. So Daniel just not mucking around with that one. Ah yes, Daniel Negreanu, one of the most successful poker players in the world, and it cost him a lot of money in this tournament to enter, let me tell you.
My secret has been the fact that I have a bankroll big enough where I can rebuy a lot. I spent 5 rebuys in the 100K. I rebought in this one, and then in the morning decided to give it another shot, and so I'm in for $750,000 in this one too. Well, a 6th place makes me a small loser, and a 5th is a profit. I'm in for $750. I can make $50,000.
Well, it cost him a fair bit to get here, Grant.
Yeah, that's crazy money. These guys have just got way too much money. Anyone that plays a 250k has obviously got a decent bankroll, to say the least.
Speaking of bankroll, there's Tom Dwan, a.k.a. Durr. Now, he's no stranger to the nosebleeds. He's got pocket tens.
Yeah, he hasn't had a great couple of years from all reports. Plays the big cash games in Macau, but good to see him back and making another final table in a huge tournament.
Folds around to Mike McDonald. He lets it go. Ike Haxton gets out of the way. Round to Max.
Max is pretty short here now, Paul, so any hand he decides to play, he could see all his chips in the middle if he gets any piece of the board.
He really needs to make something happen. It hasn't gone all that well for him at this final table. But he will make the call, try and make something happen.
And with his short stack here, Paul, if he gets any piece of this board, I'd imagine the chips are going to go in.
Well, he has got King 9 versus Pocket 10s. Here is the flop. It is a 9-6-4 flop. That could mean trouble.
Yeah, that's a disaster, Paul. I can't see him getting away from his hand at all. He's got about pot-sized bet left. And I think we'll see all the chips in the middle very quickly.
And he does just that. He puts it into the middle, and he is quickly called by the pocket tens of Tom Dwan, and he is at risk. He needs a lot of help to stay in this tournament.
He needs to catch up, otherwise he's going to bubble the bubble.
2 off the money, $250,000 to enter this tournament. I'll tell you what, you'd want some help on the turn and river here. Max just staring on, not much emotion from him. A lot of these players with so much experience, seen it all. The turn is no help. 4 of clubs.
Checking out the quickest exit.
1 card remains. Can he do it? No, he cannot. The river is no help at all. So we will lose Max Altergott from Germany in 8th place. There is a recap of the hand. He flops top pair versus the pocket tens of Tom Dwan. The turn and river are no help. In his first ever tournament in 2013, Max won $2.2 million, but today was not his day. We wish him well. And we'll be back with more from the LK Boutique 250k challenge at the Aussie Millions.
And remember, the next guy out goes home with $0.
That's
Losing
right.
$250,000 a day
Yeah.
doesn't sit well with anyone.
We are on the bubble, and it is a big bubble indeed. There is Tom Dwan. He looks down at 8-9 of hearts, and he looks like he's going to open the pot.
Yeah, it's his type of hand. He loves these hands, the suited connectors. Notorious for playing hands like this, suited connectors, suited one-gappers.
Mike McDonald always takes his time and decides not to this time. Round to Ike Haxton in the big blind.
And Ike's sitting there with a monster chip stack. He's got about a third of the chips in play, which is a huge chip lead with 7 players left. I'm sure he's more than willing to mix it up with these guys. Effective stack sizes are pretty large. Most guys here, 40 bigs plus. Plenty of play left.
It's one thing a lot of players underestimate is the management of that stack, I'm sure. Ike will make the call from the big blind, and he has pocket 4s, so we'll see a flop. The flop is a 6-3 deuce flop with 2 hearts. That's an action flop.
Yeah, that's a monster flop for both players. It hits both of them pretty hard. Ike with the gut shot and the pair, and Tom Dwan with the overcards and the flush draw. I don't see either of these players going anywhere, Paul.
105,000.
105,000 from Tom Dwan over to Ike now. Let's see how he chooses to play this hand.
Yeah, I think he's probably just going to go the check call line. If he raises here, given Tom's stack size, he's probably got a call off. His hand's that strong to call off if Tom shoves. So I think we're just going to see a check call.
That's exactly what he does. So we will see a turn. The turn, a 9. Wow, that gives Tom top pair and a backdoor flush draw. So the 9 of clubs peels. That gives Tom a commanding lead in this hand.
Yeah, you see the percentages now. Tom's gone to a massive favourite.
Wastes little time here.
Yeah, pair and a flush draw is a huge hand, Paul. And I'm sure Tom's willing to get all those chips in if the need arises.
255,000.
255,000 is the bet. Now, Grant, you're in Ike's position here with this hand. What are the choices?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very similar to the flop, Paul, in that, I mean, he has to assume that the 9 hasn't helped Tom too much. Little does he know it's helped him a great deal. But the 9 wouldn't really worry him too much. Tom's raised from early position.
Well, he makes the call. The river, an ace of hearts now.
And in Isaac's mind, that's a pretty bad card, Paul. Tom could have been continuing on the turn and the flop with the ace high, even with a flush draw. The ace, pretty much everything's got there. The flush has got there, the overcard, the ace high hand.
Ike checks now. It's over to Dwan. And this is a very, well, it's the difference between great players and good players, isn't it? The ability to put a player on a read right here and go, how much can I get out of him?
Yeah, well, I mean, Tom's got to try and assess the strength of Isaac's hand. Now, Isaac hasn't shown any real aggression throughout the whole hand, just with the call line. So Tom really has to assess how strong is Ike and how much money can I get out of him. Tom's got $1 million behind. Doesn't want to bet too big because it just shows too much strength. Bet of around 400,000. It's pretty standard, I believe.
Oh, Dwan taking his time, really thinking about it. He's counting out quite a big bet. That looks around about the 600,000 mark.
Bet.
And it is around about the 590,000 chip mark. That is a healthy bet.
Yeah, it's a pretty huge bet. It tells Ike that pretty much Tom has it. So Ike's just got to assess, you know, is he bluffing or is he going for value? And if I'm sitting in Ike's shoes, I'd think Tom's going for value here. He's only left himself about 470,000 behind, which is a pittance, really.
Well, Ike has body language of a man who's quite curious, so perhaps he is thinking it is a bluff, because he's been very animated here. He just doesn't look convinced.
Fold.
And he does fold.
This would be a fun one to show a bluff.
Huh?
This would be a fun time to show a bluff.
Flop was 236, right?
Yep.
In this hand, you got Tom Dwan against Isaac Haxton in the big blind with a pair of fours. Flop comes pretty good for him with deuce 3-6. He's got a gut shot and a pair. He, of course, check calls, and Durr has a flush draw in this spot. The turn card's the 9. Now Durr's in a really good spot. He's got the top pair and a flush draw. He bets, and you can't blame Mike for calling. Now, the river's the ace of hearts, which you'd think is a great card for Durr. He's made his flush, but not really, because now it's going to scare away Ike, where he could have got value if maybe like a 10 or a jack would have come. So for Ike, he's in a tough spot. He has to think to himself, okay, I can't beat much, but this is Durr. He could have something like Queen Jack or 7-8 and missed a straight draw. He ends up folding the hand, and as it turns out, there was a bad card for Durr.
And let's take a look at the leaderboard. Ike Haxton still with a commanding lead of over 4 million. Tom Dwan moves up to 1.9 million. A few players just over $1 million. And Fabian Quoss, our short stack, with around 16 big blinds. And we are on the bubble, which means the next player eliminated will not receive a cent. And with a $250,000 entry fee, that's quite a bubble. Round to Ike, he gets out of the way. Erik Seidel. And then he folds. Daniel Negreanu gets out of the way of the button. Over to Tom Dwan in the small blind.
And given that Fabian's in the big blind with a pretty short stack, Tom's going to try and put the pressure on, especially around the bubble. It's very important.
Blinds 20-40,000 with a 5k ante. Tom Dwan says, I'm all in. Putting the pressure on Fabian Quoss.
That's pretty standard with a 500,000.
And look at that. Quoss picks up queens, wastes no time. And look at the face of Tom Dwan. I don't think he was very happy with that. He needs a double up. Let's see if his queens hold up. We go to the flop. And there is a queen in the door. A Queen Jack 4 flop.
Not a lot there for Tom. He does have a couple of backdoor draws. Well, the running diamonds would be nice too.
I just like to see a little sweat.
Turn, a king.
Turn always brings more outs. Fabian looking to avoid a 10 now.
I'm rooting for you, Fabian. I just want to see a little sweat.
Will Fabian Quoss survive the river? Yes, it will. It is quads for Fabian
See,
Quoss.
that's a fun run out. He's live on the turn, and then you make quads.
Just the meaningless fourth queen there, Paul.
Yes, Tom Dwan now counting out the chips, and Fabian Quoss with a double up that'll take him above 30 big blinds, and Tom Dwan really feeling a little bit unlucky walking into those queens. And we'll be back. The Aussie Millions 2014 Poker Championship. The 2014 Aussie Millions LK Boutique 250k Challenge final table. We are on the bubble, and here is the leaderboard. Ike Haxton still with a commanding lead. A whole bunch of players with just over $1 million. And Phil Ivey, considered by so many as the best player in the world, is now our short stack, but still with around 24 big blinds. There you can see Max Altergott, unfortunately the first player eliminated from our final table. And like I said, we're on the bubble. $250,000 to enter. So, Grant, it's a big bubble.
Yeah, no one wants to go home next, Paul, that's for sure.
Round to Fabian Quoss. He folds. And there is Phil Ivey. Picks up ace queen.
80,000.
Makes it 80,000. Mike McDonald lets it go. And Ike Haxton.
Well, Ike's sitting there with the button. He's got a huge stack. I'm sure he wants to show a little bit of aggression here. Start pushing these guys around on the bubble. As I said, no one wants to go home next. And he might use position to try and get a little frisky here.
Re-raise to 240,000.
He three bets Phil Ivey. 240,000. The other players get out of the way. And it's back to Phil. And he moves all in. Ike. And Ike calls. So Phil Ivey, well, he is in a commanding lead. Ike Haxton with ace-jack, Phil Ivey with ace-queen. But if Ivey gets unlucky, he could be our bubble boy.
Yeah, quite possibly. I'm surprised by the speed of Ike's call, actually. I think he might have levelled himself into it a little bit. You know, he's the old mentality that, you know, Phil knows that I know kind of thing. So Phil's opened. Isaac's three-bet the button. Obviously, Isaac can be a little bit lighter, so Phil can shove a bit lighter, and Isaac's levelled himself into making the call.
Well, there's no help there for Ike Haxton to eliminate Phil Ivey. It's nice and safe for Phil. King 4-3. We go to the turn. It is a 9 of spades. Other players watching on. Unfortunately, probably hoping that Phil gets a bad beat here. But if he can feign the river, he survives, and that's exactly what he does. 2 of diamonds. So Phil Ivey, a much-needed double up through Ike Haxton.
And the chip's going to the most experienced and scariest player on this table.
I play a lot with these guys. They all play great. So, you know, I'm just going to play my best and try to make some things happen. I mean, I try hard in all events, but especially this one, especially with the level of players that they have, you really have to kind of bear down and put your best game forward.
Well, when you see the scariest player in the world sitting there and taking his opponents seriously, you know it is a real big game. 7 players left. We are on the bubble of the 250k challenge here at Crown Melbourne. Action on Ike Haxton, who just took a hit from Phil Ivey.
Yeah, he's given up the commanding chip lead that he did have.
95.
He's narrowed the gap a fair bit.
95,000.
Ike being very methodical about his amounts, make it 95,000. Folds around to Dwan.
And Ike's open for a little bit larger than what the standard raise has been. Obviously, with the chip stack he's got and with some short stacks there, he's happy to bloat the pots as much as possible.
Well, Tom Dwan looking interested and then quickly changing his mind. It's funny what the bubble will do. And Phil Ivey will make the call. So, round 2.
Nice heads up.
Ike Haxton with ace-10. Phil Ivey with a dominated ace-deuce of spades. And there's a deuce in the door. And wow, what a flop for Phil Ivey. 9-4 deuce, 2 spades.
He's not really dominated anymore after that flop. That's just about the best possible flop you can get for the ace-deuce of spades. And Isaac, the right thing would be to continue with his betting here.
That is 160,000.
160,000 over to Phil Ivey.
And he will not be going anywhere. It just depends how out of line he wants to get with his hand here. But given it's on the bubble, I think he might proceed with a little bit of caution.
And you're right, Grant. Caution it is. He makes the call. So we will see a turn card. It is the 5 of diamonds. That's an interesting card also.
Yeah, well, Phil adds a gut shot to go with his nut flush draw and overcard. And his pair. He's got a monster hand here.
The pot a little over $500,000. We are on the bubble. We talk about the tension, the way that changes certain plays. at this time. Let's see if it has any effect during this hand.
Yeah, well, Isaac's also picked up a gut shot, so I expect him to continue with the betting here. Phil hasn't shown any real aggression yet, so I don't think Isaac can be too scared about the 5 there. In saying that, Phil's call out of the big blinds, he could literally have any 2 cards knowing Phil Ivey.
Well, Ike bets a $500,000, so that's quite a big bet.
Yeah, that's a massive bet, Paul. It shows Phil that Ike's not mucking around here. What it also does, given that we're on the bubble, it really puts the pressure on Phil. If he calls here, the pot's 1.5 mil. Phil's got less than that behind. So he's going to be faced with a huge river bet, possibly an all-in. And that's got to be going through Phil's mind here. At the same time, he's got such a monster hand, it's going to be hard to let it go.
Well, the last hand, Phil Ivey doubled up through Ike Haxton. He won't want to see the chips go the other way. But it'd be hard for Phil to fold this hand.
Well, he's got so much equity, Paul. In saying that if the 3 comes and there's a 4 card straight on, it's hard to get value. So he's just hoping to hit a spade here if he continues with the hand.
Phil Ivey doesn't give much away. Hard to tell what he's thinking. Look at this. Oh, Phil Ivey, now that is a tight fold.
Yeah, that's really nitty from Phil. And it's excellent pressure from Ike.
And Ike takes round 2, and we'll be back with the LK Boutique 250k challenge at the Aussie Millions.